Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Centennial Lecture Series. This afternoon's lecture is entitled, Why Institutions Matter. Today also marks the 7th lecture in the year-long Centennial Lecture Series that features renowned international and local personalities in the academe, government, and industry. Please rise for the Philippine National Anthem.
Magiliw, pero sa silanganan, alam ng puso, sa titik mo'y buhay. Lupang hinirang, tuyat ka ng mag-ibig, sa manlulupig, di ka masisigil. Sa dagat at bundok, sa simoy at sa langit mong baghang, ay nilagang tula at awit sa paglayang minamahal. Ang kisap ng watawat mo'y tagumpay na nagtitigil. Ang bituin at araw niya kailan pa may magdidilim. Lupa ng araw ng aming konsepta, ay langit sa dilim mo. Aming ligaya na pag may mamahagin, matamatay ng dahil sa'yo.
At this point, to give us a special message for this afternoon's lecture, please welcome UP President Emerald Linda Raman.
Good afternoon, dear colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. It is a Saturday, a non-working day for some of us, but perhaps it is just as well, because then you are free and available to listen to the lecture of a person, an individual who has distinguished himself in his field. Before I proceed to talk about our guest this afternoon, allow me to share with you a few things about our centennial celebration. I believe many of you already know that the university is celebrating its 100th year this year. Among the many activities that we have lined up to commemorate our founding, we consider as the centerpiece of our UP Centennial celebration, the UP Centennial Lecture Series. And you will pardon me for being repetitive. I have said this a number of times, but I would like to explain again what the lecture series is all about. Two categories of the series have to do with UP itself. 12 of our colleagues will deliver lectures and direct our look backward to the path we have traveled thus far. They will also direct our look forward to the road not yet taken. They will help us assess our own record and suggest directions for the future. They will present the view from inside the University of the Philippines. The distinguished individuals from outside UP will offer us their ideas about what UP signifies for the rest of the country and how we can best continue to serve it. They will present the view from outside. The other two categories range farther afield, in keeping with our role as the national university, and therefore an important source of ideas that will not just advance knowledge, but will guide policy Experts, both from UP and from other institutions, will explore pressing issues confronting the nation and the world today. Issues like poverty alleviation, global warming, the state of Philippine education, the state of Philippine health, indigenous people, status of women, peace and conflict resolution, etc. Finally, distinguished persons who are not just experts but visionaries and whose life works have merited the world's recognition and respect will share their insights on issues in their respective fields. Under this category, we have had two distinguished lecturers. 2004 Nobel laureate for physics, Dr. Jonathan David Gross, and 2007 Harvard Foundation Scientist of the Year, our very own, a UP alumnus, Dr. Baldomero Oliveira. Today, we have the honor of welcoming the third of these distinguished individuals, another Nobel Prize winner, this time from the social sciences, economic historian and 1993 Nobel laureate in economic sciences, Professor Douglas North. Professor North, with his colleagues, permanently changed the face of economics by creating the field called New Institutional Economics. But I shall defer to our next speaker, who will formally introduce Professor North to explain a bit more about what we can expect to hear from our guest this afternoon. Professor North, you do us a great honor by accepting our invitation to be part of the Centennial Lecture Series. Your willingness to share your thoughts with us is proof of a generosity of spirit, which is perhaps an even greater gift than a great mind. On behalf of UP, I thank you most warmly for this, and I take a deep pleasure in welcoming you to the University of the Philippines. Thank you.
To introduce this afternoon's distinguished lecturer, we have invited another distinguished economist and faculty member at the George Mason University, protege of our distinguished lecturer this afternoon, and despite his height and accent, was born and raised in this country. May I call on Professor John Nye.
President Roman, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great honor and a distinct pleasure to be standing here today in the land of my birth to introduce a man whose writings are of supreme importance for the problems that face this area of the world today. As a recipient of the 1993 Nobel Memorial Prize in Economic Science, North stands as one of the giants of the economic profession. Yet, even that understates his importance to the social sciences. Perhaps more than the leading giants in the field, North's work is not only relevant to the Philippines, but especially important to policy and development. His wide-ranging appeal is seen not simply in the huge citations to his work by economists, but rare among distinguished economists, North is almost as widely cited in political science, history, law, sociology, and anthropology as he is in economics itself. Others, many of the great economists, are brilliant but highly technical, working of abstruse issues that are deeply important but perhaps less immediately relevant to the concerns of developing economy. North's vita is so long that I don't think we would have time to be listening to me, or even time to sleep if I went through it. However, let me mention very briefly that he spent most of his career at two institutions. That is, after receiving his bachelor's, master's, and PhD at University of California, Berkeley, He was employed for 33 years at the University of Washington in Seattle, where he became department chairman. And in 1983, he moved to Washington University in St. Louis. Great confusion for everybody, since it's both Washington, where I had the pleasure of working with him for 22 years. North's work has focused on a very simple question. In our view, the only question that economists should really care about. Why are some nations rich, others poor? In the 1970s, North broke with the conventional wisdom that said that the primary issue was lack of technology and lack of capital. But North argued that these were merely proximate causes of development, and the true problems were deeper and more fundamental. In North's views, the importance of high transactions costs and poor institutions were what really made the difference in terms of explaining which nations succeeded and which nations had failed. For instance, transactions costs can be thought of as the costs of making the exchange itself. In many cases, for instance, our statistics might treat, say, 100 pesos for a certain amount of fruit as being the same, regardless of where you bought it. However, it takes you an hour to buy fruit from one store and 5 minutes for the other. You all know well in the Philippines that the true cost of buying the fruit is definitely not the same. Yet economics and economists did not have a framework for thinking about how transactions costs, and particularly the high transactions costs, crippled an economy. Similarly, institutions, which North defines as the rules of the game, are all about, in his view, having the proper benchmarks, having the proper baselines for enabling things like productivity and technology. In particular, the rule of law, secure, stable, and easily tradable private property, stable policy, and low costs of trade are critical for sustainable growth. It is possible to grow without many of these. Indeed, no country today probably completely meets these conditions. But without them, sustained growth is difficult. Just as no man is 100% healthy, no nation has 100% of these characteristics. However, all we know is that at some point, a sufficient number of ills may strangle a promising nation or even bring down a successful one, just as a succession of small ills or composite health problems may completely cripple what was otherwise a sane or whole person. North's views on institutions are now conventional wisdom, but not then. It took 20 or 30 years for this to change. Moreover, we still do not fully grasp his central insight, the problem of the credible state. Adam Smith alerted us to the importance of the idea that mutual exchange, when voluntary, is beneficial. But you must have law, order, and stability in order for the exchange to be voluntary. Usually, this is guaranteed by a third party, which we think of as the state. However, as North was the first to emphasize in the literature, any state powerful enough to protect private property and ensure law and order is also powerful enough to abuse it. Hence, the issue is not whether to have a large state or a small state, but a state that does the right things to enable the market and growth and abstains from the